Mikey P back in the Money Media YouTube channel and on the audio side for the weekend recap for this past weekend. Now, this is March 17th, St. Patrick's Day here, and a different recapper, but certainly we had to get him back in after his fantastic performance this past week on the Colonial show. So Michael Domabo is here with us to recap some Colonial to start, and then we'll do some first racing stakes from the weekend. Michael, welcome here into the Players Pod once again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to recap races that you had a good opinion on. But it was just fun to be out at Colonial Downs in person. Such a fun and wholesome atmosphere. Big crowds for Virginia Derby Day. So I definitely think that the Saturday of the 3-day spring meet experiment for Colonial Downs went off as a rousing success.
Yeah, huge crowd, huge handle. I think it was the second biggest handle all time at Colonial. Was that right? Second biggest? I think I read 6.5 million.
But that makes sense based on how many people were out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll jump into that card that day, and we'll start at the obvious place at the Virginia Derby there. An American Promise, a horse you had a huge opinion on. You definitely liked this one. And he showed up in a big way. He won by 7 3/4 lengths in apparently the fastest Derby prep ever. Went 146-2 over a racetrack that yielded fantastic times. Paid $16.80. The favorite's nowhere in sight.
Yeah, I think the Beyer speed figure kind of tells the story for me of his performance. He got a 95 Beyer, which is exactly in line with what he got in his maiden breaking score 3-back. And I think the key for him is that if he can get a good trip in a forwardly placed position, he's going to deliver a big effort. And I think that was just the case on Saturday. He was very tactical. He broke well, and he was able to, even though Getaway Car was sent away from there, the favorite, he was able to just move off one path and stalk him on the outside and took over at will. And drew away from the field. Now, I don't know how many horses behind him are going to have implications on the Triple Crown Trail, but with Dwayne Lucas getting the 50 points here, I'm sure that American Promise is pressing onward towards the Kentucky Derby starting gate with even maybe a spot in between. You know how Dwayne likes to run them back.
Yeah, with 7 weeks in between, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with these horses, because I would think that maybe that they would want one more prep leading into the Derby. He certainly doesn't need any more points, though. He is qualified with that 50 points that he got here, and I believe he's gotten some points in a few other races. McPeak's horse, Randall Judgment, I thought raced pretty well to be second, but it almost seemed like a default second. And Omaha ran his race. He got his setup. He ended up grinding up to be third in there, all at really nice prices. The two favorites, I mean, Getaway Car, he got the front. He got what he thought that he would get. And along with Rapture, who took a ton of money, neither one of them really fired at all.
Yeah, I would say Getaway Car, he might have been a victim of getting pressed by American Promise. He seems like a horse that he needs everything absolutely perfect to win at this type of level. Rapture was just the absolute no-show of the day. And it's especially surprising, and we'll get to it a little bit later, it's especially surprising Rapture's performance given how well some of the Brad Cox horses came in and took some big purses down at Colonial on Saturday. So he was a big disappointment. But like I said, with that 7 3/4 length margin for American Promise, I think he's really the only one you would want to take out of there. And even then, you have to think about whether it was kind of this time was the time to get him at 7-1. And when he shows up next time, either in the Derby where there's going to be a fast pace and he might not get an easy stalking trip on the outside, or another prep where he's going to be a short price, he might be worth opposing, because 7-1 was generous for him against that field. But I don't think you're going to want to take a lower price against a tougher field.
Well, the race prior also had Oaks implications. The Virginia Oaks was won by a horse that was highly touted by us also on the preview shows, and that was Fondly for Graham Motion. Figure came up slow, ended up with a 70 buyer in that spot. But visually, I did think that she raced very well. She dug in the stretch. It was her second lifetime start to catch early on, or to catch the leader there. And that was, I thought, a very impressive performance visually. Not against the clock compared to everything else that raced that day, but she seems like a real horse.
Yeah, I think she's definitely still got upside too, with only a couple starts under her belt. She's got a very solid pedigree as a sibling to Antiquarian, who won the Peter Pan and raced in the Belmont last year, a couple years back. So Fondley has some upside. I do think that the undefeated record and the win in an Oaks prep and the connections might have her as a little bit of an underlay if she goes straight into the Kentucky Oaks off this performance, because there's really no getting around it. The 70 buyer is not going to get it done in the Kentucky Oaks. It's not going to get it done in those top tier Oaks preps even. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of money she takes leading into the Kentucky Oaks with that pristine record intact. I saw that she closed at 19-1 in the Oaks future pool, which I think is a little bit light for a horse coming off of a 70 buyer, but she's in the right hands with Graham Motion and our friend Will Humphrey assisting his charge as well on the way to the Oaks. So everything's in front of her, but she does have to get faster.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if they do another prep for her also with the 7 weeks. And she's lightly raced, but certainly, like you said, tons of upside for that one. We will definitely be following her in the next several weeks and leading up to the Oaks. Well, there was a couple maiden winners from Brad Cox on this card that got significant buyer figures. Lion of Justice ended up winning the 5th race on Saturday in a quick time, 1:33 and 4 a mile under Flavian Pratt with a nice blowout win. And then just right after that, another Brad Cox verifier. That was the first time started that Resolute Racing paid $1 million for. So that one won a 6 furlong race in 1:08. So that, I mean, super fast times. Both look very talented, got pretty big figures. So lots of, I do think some interesting options for these horses in the future here, especially this year.
Yeah, and they kind of have two different feathers under their cap. So, Lion of Justice did win at a mile. So that means that, he's going to have aspirations to go on and take on some route races, not in the not too distant future. I could see a race like the Lexington as kind of one of those last round Derby preps with an eye towards the Preakness on his dance card. Now, I think that might be the only difference between these two, because there were tons of similarities from the fact that they were both trained by Brad Cox, both ridden by Flavian Pratt, both cost $1 million at the sale, and both worked together coming into this race. So it was a very easy thing to do, is to after Lion of Justice ran off the screen, to know that Verifier was going to put forth a good performance after them working together. And and then the end result, both 92 buyers. So big things on the horizon for these two, and it's always fun to follow the stars of Virginia Derby Day and the stars of Colonial Downs on through their future careers.
Well, let's switch gears here a little bit. And, these weekend recaps are sponsored by First Racing. We do appreciate all their sponsorship, especially for their coverage that we've done all throughout the spring, the championship meet for Gulfstream. And there was a couple stakes races over the weekend. Now, ungraded, but they raced the Hutchison. Used to be a graded stake in the past. This is a 6 furlong race here that was won by Rolando. Now, that was the second win in a row for that one. This one I thought raced pretty well a couple back on February 1st. Ended up in the River Thames race. And we saw how well that horse came back to race in the Fountain of Youth. This horse has been fantastic since then. 2 straight wins, nice little stake win. I think this horse is a pretty nice sprinter.
Yeah, and I think the figure came back relatively fast with a 90 buyer. Just as the months keep going on, those Vacomas keep on running. So another winner for that sire who's got off to a really fast start at stud. I think the big disappointment in this race was Guns Loaded, who didn't even go off favored. So I guess there was some signal there in the fact that coming out of stakes tries, he still wasn't favored over Rolando. That's really the second straight very disappointing performance for Guns Loaded after winning the Mucho Macho Man 3 back. But Rolando, on the other hand, he could be going on to stakes, to graded stakes company coming up. I could think of maybe one of those 7 furlong sprints at Keeneland or early March, early April would be a possibility, with Fausto Gutierrez having some success there in the past, with Latruska running at Keeneland. So that could be on his radar coming up. So an exciting performance, 90 buyer at this time of year. A lot of room to improve, and a lot of ability in the Son of Vacoma.
Well, they also had an ungraded sprint on the grass on Saturday, and it was the Captiva Island. It was for 115,000. The rematch between Epona's Hope and Just a Care. They had just faced each other back on February 8th, and Epona's Hope got the front and was able to get the win. Did the exact same thing this week, jumped to the front by herself, and she won again, held off Just a Care, and really seemed to looked better winning this race than she did the prior one. So that lone speed at Gulfstream, very dangerous all the time. Yeah,
took the words right out of my mouth. I think it was basically lather, rinse, and repeat for Epona's Hope over Just a Care in the Captiva Island after the same result in the ladies turf sprint about 5 weeks ago. And like you said, Gulfstream Park, the speed is dangerous. Epona's Hope was clear as clear can be early on the front end, even going into the race, and really paid a generous 2-1, given that pace advantage that she had. So I think as the calendar turns and the Gulfstream Stakes conclude, and horses like this point to stakes races at Keeneland and on the Naira circuit, you could see Just a Care turning the tables on Epona's Hope as the distances increase to 5.5 furlongs. Maybe the fields get a little bigger, and there's more speed in the race. So Just a Care might still be the one I want taking out of it, but certainly on Saturday, Epona's Hope had everything her own way.
Well, let's stick at Gulfstream. We'll go to Sunday. They had one stake race on Sunday, and it was the Any Limit Stakes here. This was 3-year-old fillies. Safi brought Rojo Rita back after that horse was disappointing in the Forward Gal. She did win by 16 lengths coming in a maiden race back in November, but she got tracked down late by Unchained Elaine, who I thought raced better than she did in the Forward Girl. This one got the right setup, and she looked a deserving winner. I do think that she was well ridden, but looked shot out of a cannon around the turn. There was no denying that she was going to win pretty early in that race.
Yeah, I think Unchained Elaine definitely proved to be better than Roja Rita on the day. Roja Rita has really kind of fallen off of a cliff since that big maiden score back in November of last year. So we'll see if Safi can go back to the drawing board and get Roja Rita back on the right foot moving forward. But to temper enthusiasm a little bit, the figure did come back pretty slow at a 77. So I'm not sure if Unchained Elaine is really going to move forward to graded stakes company or races kind of like the test moving. I don't think she's necessarily that quality. But there's a lot of stakes races at this level in South Florida over the next few months that she could rattle off and make a good amount of money for her connections if they choose the path of least resistance like that.
I think the most disappointing horse in the race was the 7 Magnolia Prime. I know some of our previews a lot of us liked this horse, and she went off at 2-1 in this spot and really was never in it. I'm not sure if it was the lack of Lasix or what happened there. Just really never got into it. And she ended up last in here. The barn certainly going very well. Barbosa is red hot right now, but this horse just didn't fire.
Yeah, it's always sometimes you have those no-shows from Safi Joseph or Barbosa trainees, and I would say moving forward, you always want to take those with enhanced caution, because sometimes once they go off form, it takes them a while to return. So I would be willing to play against that horse for a while until she can prove that she's back on track.
Well, let's jump to Santa Anita for this past weekend. They had the Grade 3 Santa Ana on turf. It was an upset here. Lady Claypool, she was able to win her third race in a row. She looked fantastic doing it, flying from off the pace at almost 12-1. Big disappointment. Catherine Marissa was 1-2 in that race, and really got kind of an interesting ride. I thought a crazy trip, but she had nothing going into the stretch, and Lady Claypool just gobbled everyone up and went away.
Yeah. Lady Claypool did not look at any point in the race like an 11-1 shot. She was able to settle in and angle out and just end the race in a matter of strides. And that's 3 straight wins, and just moving right up the class ladder for the Baltus barn. And I read in the Daily Racing Form that they might be looking to target Grade 1 company next time out. Grade 1 potentially in quotation marks, with the Gamely still retaining that Grade 1 status. But that will be another test for her. And if she can keep moving forward and keep moving up the class ladder, then she can be on to bigger and better things throughout the rest of the year. And like you mentioned, Kathy and Marissa, I feel like the step up against Older for the first time really didn't suit her. The ride was interesting because she had speed, but Frankie kind of always had her outside and in the clear. She never really got settled into a good spot with cover. I don't know what this necessarily means for the form of She Feels Pretty, who was defeated by who defeated Kathy and Marissa in the American Oaks. So I think that calls into question a little bit that field's quality. And so I think it's easy to look back and see that the 1-2 was a significant underlay on Kathy and Marissa. These Dutch row horses that have shipped out west haven't necessarily fired the same way that they have in New York. But it'll be interesting to see if she can get back on track, and it'll be interesting to see what Lady Claypool can do the rest of the year, because she definitely looks like she's on a bit of a run right now.
Yeah, Dutch row 0 for 10 now at Santa Anita so far this year, with just 1 second place finish. So really tough to figure what's going on with his horses out there out west. Let's go to Sunday at Santa Anita, and they had a downhill listed stake, the Irish O'Brien. Another upset here. Prancing Through Paris was a nice winner at 11-1. Really, on paper, I thought she was difficult to have. She had won her last start at 38-1, going a mile and a 1X at Santa Anita. I'm not sure, how that one gets to this horse in this race, but she's certainly very sharp and racing well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's an angle that I've always enjoyed down the hill is those turnbacks from 8 furlongs, especially the turnbacks from a mile that have forward position in those races, because then they're still tactical enough to get a good spot in those races down the hill, and then have that foundation underneath to finish the job. So that's exactly what Prancing Through Paris was doing here, off of the allowance win at a mile in late February. And it was another example of a horse that was 11-1 and never looked like a loser during the race, as she came off the turn 3 wide and powered across and held off Pushiness, who is the slight second choice. They kind of went overboard for the number 6 Shocking Gray in here. And so, Urton's got a nice Calbred on his hands. So I don't know if Open Company is necessarily in her future. The 85 buyer is pretty competitive with the graded stakes company that she'll meet out in California. So it'll be interesting to see if they try Open Company in a next start, or if they stick to these $100,000 purses against fellow Calbreds. But 2 races at Santa Anita that we're covering this weekend, 2 11-1 shots that looked like 8-5 shots throughout the race.
Yeah, both had won their previous start also. So, I mean, there is value to be had if you can find some of these long shots. And of course, they had pick six carryover on Sunday that certainly paid off big. If you were able to have this one, then you know that pick six was huge there for Sunday with that double carryover. Just lots of great opportunities at these first racetracks. It was 22,463 if you had that pick six for Sunday. I certainly struggled and did not have it. Well, Michael, plenty of Derby preps ahead this week. Getting a little busier. Got the 100-pointers starting, Louisiana Derby, Jeff Ruby Stakes, and just 2 weeks we're going to have that Florida Derby. So lots of big things coming.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's that time of year. It's almost March Madness is in full swing, and you've got the corollary between what March Madness is, and then you've got kind of the regional preps similar to the regions in the March Madness bracket that are coming up pretty soon, and then they'll all converge on the first Saturday in May, and we'll see who's best on the day.
Wow. So yeah, plenty of great things on the In the Money YouTube channel, on the In the Money Media Network. So check out some of the videos and previews for these Derby prep races. Just so many things, everyday coverage on that YouTube channel. Michael, really great to catch up with you. Always appreciate your thoughts. Congrats on a fantastic week at Colonial, and hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mikey.
We'll be back right after this. If you're watching on the video side, catch the other videos. On the audio side, stay tuned for more.